I gave my whole life to my son, and he paid me back with a slap. One night, he threw me out of my own house, with nothing but my dog beside me. No clothes. No money. No family. But I didn't beg. I didn't cry. They thought they had destroyed me. But they didn't know I was just getting started. Before start, just subscribe to this channel. I lived my whole life just for my son. From the moment he was born, I buried all my own dreams and desires to make his happiness my priority. From morning till night, cooking, cleaning, taking care of every little need of his, that was my world. I never took time for myself, never thought about my own happiness. My son was everything to me. In every small smile of his, I found my peace. Whenever he was hurt or upset, I would forget all my own pain and loneliness. I always believed that being a mother meant making life more beautiful for him than for myself. He never saw me struggle because I hid all my worries. I managed the home, gave my all to ensure my son was happy and successful. That was how I saw my life, the same love I had for my daughter-in-law and grandchildren, but my son was my whole world. Every decision I made was for him. Every pain I bore silently. This was my identity, my love, my sacrifice, without complaints, without asking for anything in return, just hoping he would live a happy life. One day, everything changed. My son started talking about the house, his demands growing louder with each passing day. He wanted me to transfer the ownership of the house to his name. At first, I thought it was just a simple request, maybe a way to handle things better. But soon, it became clear it wasn't just a suggestion, it was a demand. I couldn't understand why he was being so forceful. This house was all I had, a place filled with memories of years spent raising him. I had worked hard, sacrificed so much to keep this home safe for my family. The thought of handing it over, as if it were just a piece of paper, made my heart ache. When I refused, the atmosphere in the house started to change. There was a coldness in my son's eyes I hadn't seen before. The warmth in his voice turned sharp and angry. Arguments began, small at first, but they grew bigger, louder, harder to ignore. His wife, who once smiled politely, began to show her true colors. She started looking at me with resentment, her words dripping with bitterness. The house that was once filled with laughter and love now echoed with tension and silent threats. Every day felt heavier. The home, which had been my sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. And I knew deep down, this was just the beginning of something much darker. The day my daughter-in-law lost control is a day I will never forget. It started with harsh words, sharp and cutting, but then suddenly, her anger exploded. Without warning, she struck me, her hands hitting my face and arms. I was shocked, hurt in ways I never thought possible. The pain wasn't just physical, it cut deeper, right into my heart. But even as she raised her hand against me, I stayed silent. I didn't cry out. I didn't fight back. Because no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't bear to break my son's heart. I wanted to protect him from the truth, from the chaos that was tearing our family apart. I looked at her, the woman who had become a part of our home, and wondered how love had turned into such cruelty. I wondered how my own family could hurt me this way. Yet I kept my pain hidden behind a quiet smile, swallowing my tears and swallowing my pride. That night, I carried my wounds in silence. The world outside didn't know what had happened inside our home. I told no one, because I thought it was better this way, for my son, for the family. I told myself that I was strong enough to endure this pain. But inside, I felt broken, alone, and betrayed. The table was all set for dinner, the food waiting quietly as I sat down, hoping for a peaceful evening. Suddenly, my son came out of his room, and right behind him was his wife. Without saying a word, my son walked straight up to me and slapped me hard across the face. I was frozen, unable to understand what had just happened. The shock of his hand on my cheek was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. How could my own son, the one I had loved and cared for all these years, do something so cruel? His eyes were cold, and there was no sign of regret, just silence. Behind him, His wife watched, her face unreadable. The room felt heavy, filled with a silence louder than any words. I wanted to ask why, to make sense of this sudden betrayal, but no words came out. I sat there stunned, my heart breaking as I realized the family I knew was slipping away from me, piece by piece. It was late at night, quiet, almost too quiet. I was still trying to make sense of what had happened at dinner when they both came back into the room. My son didn't say a word. His wife stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Before I could ask anything, before I could even stand properly, he grabbed my arm. "Get out," he said flatly, as if I were a stranger, a burden. I thought I misheard him. My own son, asking me to leave my house? But he didn't stop there. He yanked my arm harder, pulling me toward the door. My legs trembled, my heart raced. I begged him with my eyes, hoping for a moment of hesitation, a flicker of love, but there was none. His wife opened the door, and with one final push, they shoved me out, into the cold, empty night. The door slammed shut behind me. I stood there for a moment, not knowing where to go, what to do. The house where I had spent my entire life, where I had raised him, now close to me forever. And then I felt a soft nudge at my leg, my dog. He had followed me out, refusing to leave me alone. He was the only one who stayed. We sat together on the front steps for a while, the night air biting at my skin. I had no bag, no money, no direction, just the clothes on my back and the loyal soul by my side. The world felt cruel, and I felt invisible. Like I didn't matter to anyone anymore. I didn't know where else to go, so I called the only person I could think of, my childhood friend, Shama. My hands were trembling as I dialed her number from a borrowed phone at a roadside tea stall. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when she heard my voice and sensed my pain, she didn't ask many questions. She just said, "Come to me." With nothing but a worn-out shawl over my shoulders and my dog walking quietly beside me, I boarded a bus to a city I hadn't visited in decades. Every bump in the road felt like a reminder of everything I had lost: my home, my dignity, my son. I stared out the window, tears drying on my face, trying to gather what little strength I had left. When I arrived, Shama welcomed me with open arms. She looked older, wiser, but her warmth hadn't changed. She hugged me tightly, the kind of embrace that reminded me I wasn't completely alone in this world. She didn't ask for details that night. She simply made me a cup of tea, laid out a bed for me and my dog, and let me cry myself to sleep. In the days that followed, I started to feel a spark inside me, a small one, but enough to keep going. I couldn't just stay broken. I had to find a way to stand on my feet again. I had nothing material left, but I still had something valuable: my hands, my heart, and my cooking. I had always loved being in the kitchen, creating dishes that brought comfort and joy to others. One evening, as we sat sipping tea, I told Shama my idea. I want to cook again. Not just for us, for others. I want to start something, even if it's small. She looked at me and smiled, the kind of smile that says, "I believe in you." And just like that, something changed inside me. I wasn't just a mother who had been thrown out. I was a woman with purpose. The kitchen had always been my place of peace, a place where I found meaning beyond words. Growing up, and even later as a mother, cooking was never just a chore for me. It was love, it was care, it was connection. And now, when everything else had been taken from me, it was the only thing I had left. I shared my idea with Shama in detail, how I wanted to start a small cafe, just something simple, enough to feed myself and my dog and maybe touch a few lives along the way. She looked at me with moist eyes and didn't hesitate. She gave me the little savings she had tucked away, saying, "Use this to start over. You've given so much to others your whole life. It's your turn now." With that money, I rented a tiny corner spot in a busy local market. It wasn't fancy, just a small space with a few chairs and a stove. I painted the walls myself, cleaned the counters, and set up a menu with just a handful of items. But one dish was special. It was something I used to cook for my son when he came home tired from school, a slow-cooked, spiced recipe that took hours to prepare and only minutes to finish. It was comforting, rich, and full of flavor, just like the love I had poured into it all those years. I gave it a new name, served it with fresh bread and a side of homemade chutney, and presented it with the same warmth I used to serve at home. And something magical happened. People started coming. First one, then two, then five. They would taste the food and close their eyes like it reminded them of something they had forgotten, a mother's touch, a quiet moment, a long-lost flavor from childhood. Within weeks, the cafe wasn't just surviving, it was alive. Every time I stirred the pot, I felt like I was stirring my own soul back to life. And for the first time in a long time, I started believing that maybe, just maybe, I could build something of my own from nothing. The smell of spices and simmering broth started drawing people in long before I could afford a signboard. At first, it was just a few curious passers-by. Some construction workers, a college student, a mother with her little child. They would stop by, sit at one of the mismatched chairs, and taste the dish that had once been my son's favorite. And something about it, something in the warmth of the flavors, the way it was served with care, made people come back. They would tell their neighbors, their friends, their colleagues. Word spread faster than I could have ever imagined. Soon, the tiny cafe I had opened with trembling hands became a buzzing little spot in the neighborhood. People didn't just come for the food, they came for the feeling. They would sit and talk to me like I was family. "This tastes like my mother's cooking," one man said with tears in his eyes. A young woman told me it reminded her of home, of comfort. Every compliment they gave me felt like a stitch, slowly sewing together the parts of me that had been torn apart. I started waking up before dawn, prepping ingredients with a kind of energy I didn't know I still had in me. I wasn't just surviving, I was building something real. And with every passing day, I felt stronger. I was no longer the mother who had been discarded. I was a woman of purpose, a woman with something valuable to give. The cafe became a local favorite. It was featured in a food blog one day. Just a small write-up, but that alone brought in even more curious food lovers. I hired a helper, then two. People started calling me Auntie with affection, and when they spoke about my cooking, they used words like healing, comforting, honest. And somewhere in all this, I began to smile again. Not just the polite kind, but the real, deep kind that rises from your chest when you feel proud. My hands, once bruised and trembling, now moved with confidence. My eyes, once heavy with sorrow, were lit with determination. And in the smell of my special dish, I found something I never thought I'd feel again: hope. After months of serving meals in that small cafe, I realized something. This wasn't just about cooking anymore. It had become a movement of sorts. People weren't just coming for food. They were coming for the warmth, for the feeling of home, for a piece of something real in a world that had become so rushed and cold. So I took the biggest risk of my life. I found a small space on a busy street, rented, old, and in need of work, but I could see the vision clearly. I borrowed a little more, poured everything I had into it, and opened my first official restaurant. It wasn't fancy, but it had soul. Wooden tables, hand-painted menus, my own recipes on the wall. It felt like a part of me. I named it after something close to my heart, something that reminded me of strength and survival. People came out of curiosity at first. But once they tasted my special dish, they returned with friends, then again with family, and soon, my little restaurant was filled every evening. The same dish that once brought comfort to my broken heart was now healing others in its own quiet way. Within weeks, local food critics visited. Bloggers wrote about it. Someone even posted a video online that went viral. One day, a couple drove 4 hours just to try the food. That moment, watching them sit at one of my tables, smiling as they took their first bite, I knew I had built something far beyond what I ever dreamed. The restaurant became a name people whispered with excitement. Lines would form before we opened. My staff grew. My confidence grew. And my world, once so small and full of pain, was now full of life, color, and purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading. I was thriving. IT was a normal day, or at least it began that way. I had gotten into the habit of making surprise visits to my restaurant branches just to see how everything was running and to feel the energy of the space for myself. That day, I stepped into one of my busiest locations, smiling as the familiar aroma of my signature dish filled the air. The staff greeted me with warm nods and cheerful good afternoons. I was about to head into the kitchen when something caught my eye. There, sitting at a corner table, laughing with two children and holding menus in their hands, were faces I hadn't seen in years, my son and his wife. I froze. It was as if time had folded in on itself. My heart stuttered in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't hear anything beyond the sound of my own breath. I stood still, just watching them. My son looked older. A little tired, maybe. My daughter-in-law hadn't changed much, though her smile now seemed more forced than I remembered. And the children, their children, were innocent, giggling, excited about their meal. A strange heaviness settled over me. I didn't know what to feel first: shock, hurt, anger, or that deep ache that only a mother could understand. That night, they threw me out played like a reel in my mind. The slap, the push, the darkness. My dog's soft whimper as we stood in the street with nowhere to go. And now here they were, unknowingly sitting in a restaurant built by the very woman they once discarded, eating from the hands they once dismissed. The irony stung. I stood there for a long while, hidden just enough that they didn't notice me. My staff waited for direction, sensing something had shifted in my mood. But I couldn't look away. This moment wasn't part of any plan. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't victory. It was the raw, unexpected truth of life coming full circle. I stood there, watching them. My son, my daughter-in-law, enjoying the food, chatting with their kids, completely unaware that they were sitting inside my restaurant, eating the dish that had brought me back to life. For a moment, I thought of turning around and leaving quietly. But then, I remembered that night. The sting of the slap. The silence in the room as I clutched my cheek, staring at the boy I raised with my own hands. The cold, heartless push that sent me stumbling into the night. No coat. No bags. No money. Just me and my dog and the emptiness of being unwanted in the very home I built with love. That memory burned in my chest, and something inside me shifted. I signaled to the manager and quietly said, "Call security. Ask them to escort those people out. The ones at the corner table." He looked confused. "Ma'am, are they causing any problem?" "No," I replied calmly. "But they don't belong here." The moment security started walking toward them, I took a step back, staying hidden, but close enough to witness everything. I wanted them to feel it, every single second of it. "What is this nonsense? Why are you approaching us?" My son barked, standing up abruptly. His children looked around, confused and frightened. "I'm sorry, sir," one of the guards said firmly, "but we've been instructed to remove you from the premises immediately." "What? What do you mean remove us?" "On whose orders?" his wife snapped, standing beside him, rage building in her voice. "This is harassment," she screamed. "You can't do this." "Who the hell told you to?" "I did." My voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. They turned. Their expressions melted from anger to disbelief. My son's lips trembled. My daughter-in-law went pale, her fury dying in her throat. I stepped forward slowly, each footstep echoing like thunder. "I'm the owner of this place. Every tile, every chair, every scent of food you smell, it's mine. This is my restaurant." Gasps rippled across nearby tables. Waiters paused. Customers stopped eating, their eyes fixed on us. My son tried to speak. Masai. But I raised a hand. Silence fell again. "You remember that night, don't you?" I said, eyes locked on his. "When you stood with her and threw me out of my home, like trash. When you didn't ask why, didn't even look back. That night, I stood outside in the dark, alone, with nothing but my dog and a broken heart. Tears brimmed in my eyes, but my voice stayed strong. And now, this is how it feels. To be told you don't belong somewhere. To be pushed away. Not by strangers, but by someone you once trusted with your whole life. My daughter-in-law lunged forward. "You can't do this. This is cruelty." "No," I said, stepping closer. "This is justice. And I'm not the helpless woman you threw out. I built this empire with pain as my fuel and tears as my strength. I rose. Without you." Security tightened their grip. The children started crying. Other diners whispered, phones recording everything. "Please," my son finally said, his voice cracking. "Just, please don't do this in front of the kids." I leaned in. Exactly. Think about how I felt. Alone. In the cold. With no roof. No one cared then. I nodded to the guards. "Escort them out." And just like that, the same hands that once shoved me out of my home now gently pushed them out of mine. They left, heads bowed, shame pouring from every step. But this time, the difference was clear. Everyone saw, and no one stopped it. A few days later, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but something in my chest tightened the moment I opened it. There they were, my son, my daughter-in-law, and their children standing just behind them. Their faces looked different now. Not proud, not angry, just tired, guilty, maybe even ashamed. For a long while, none of us said a word. Then he finally spoke. "Mom, we're sorry." I looked at him, the boy I once cradled in my arms, the boy whose every birthday I never missed, whose lunchbox I packed with extra love. And then I looked at myself, stronger, clearer, alive. "I know," I said softly. He stepped forward. "Can we come in? Can we talk?" I shook my head gently. There's nothing left to say. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I had cried those tears long ago and left the pieces of my broken heart somewhere on that dark street the night they threw me out. Now I had peace. A home I built myself. A restaurant that carried my name. A life that no longer depended on anyone's permission to feel whole. They stood there for a while longer, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. I smiled kindly, then closed the door. Inside, my dog looked up at me, tail wagging. I bent down, stroked his head, and whispered, "We're okay now, aren't we?" Because we were. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need an apology to heal. I had chosen my happiness. I had chosen me. Some stories don't end with a reunion. Some end with strength, quiet, unshakable, and earned the hard way. This mother was broken, abandoned, and left with nothing but her dog and her dignity. But instead of letting that night define her, she used it as fuel. She rose from the ashes of betrayal and built a new life, one bite at a time, one step at a time, until her name meant something again. Not to the world, but to herself. She didn't beg for love. She didn't chase forgiveness. She proved that even the deepest wounds can heal when you start choosing yourself. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories like this one. Your support means everything. See you in the next one.